This is Joe Wong. Welcome to the Trap Set. During the age of social distancing, we're recording remotely and releasing extra episodes. Today's guest is Jim Eno, perhaps best known as the drummer for the band Spoon. Though that band's style has evolved radically over its 25-year existence, Eno's drumming has been consistently tasteful, disciplined, and compositionally clever. Spoon is reissuing its catalog via Matador Records, beginning with early albums Telephono and Soft Effects, which will be re-released on Friday. Aside from his work as a drummer, Jim owns the Austin-based studio, Public Hi-Fi. He's engineered and produced for artists such as Chick Chick Chick, Cornell Dupree, John Vanderslice, Alejandro Escovedo, Future Islands, and many others. Jim spoke to me last month from his home in Austin, Texas. So what's going on at your studio these days? Do you still have people going in and working?
No. So I pretty much shut everything down right around March. I would say like March 13th, right? Like the week before South by Southwest. I had a client in the week before, and she evidently was hanging out with Tom Hanks the week before. And so that was right when all that stuff went down. So we pretty much locked down and sort of told everyone that was in the studio that day they need to quarantine and stuff. So it put us we were pretty heightened right from the start, which is good, so I haven't really been doing much, but so everything's been canceled. I've been doing like a lot of mixing, working on some, side project stuff, just trying to keep busy, but it's actually been good to hang out with the family,
Yeah, I mean, it's probably, for me, it's given me more time to spend with the people that I love the most, and it's made me realize that maybe my priorities are a little bit skewed.
Yeah, totally, yeah. I mean, for us, we've been going pretty hard since 1995, and you know how it is in the music business.
When you say us, you mean the band
Spoon, Spoon, touring, and as soon as we're done touring, we work on records and put them out. And but you know how it is being in the music business. It's like something comes along, you usually don't turn it down. You try to do everything because you just never know when the next thing is coming. So this pretty much is the first time I'm able to be like, no, I'm not, I'm just can't do anything, So it has been a little bit of a, eye-opening experience, I guess.
Yeah, I've actually recently started saying no to things, and it's been terrifying.
Yeah,
but
I know,
also
totally.
Empowering, and it's the right thing to do at this point in my career.
Exactly, right. And I'm getting like random people hitting me up to work at the studio, and I don't want to put like my house engineer at risk and everything. So it's just sort of like, I think we can take a little bit more time off,
Well, I was thinking about the first time you and I met, Jim, and that was when I was playing drums for Mary Timony, and the two of us were playing as a duo, and we supported Spoon for a tour. And that was 15 years ago or more.
Was it really?
16 years ago, I think.
Oh, great.
But I remember at the time, I was really impressed because you were still working a day job and you were working on the bus. You were designing, I believe it was processors that went into household appliances. Is that right?
They went into like handheld devices. So it was like, Apple's Newton or anything low power and high performance, and ends up like sort of leading the path for cell phones.
this was not during the era of the Newton, though, that I knew you. It was something else that I
Right,
think you were
exactly.
working.
Yeah. But that's pretty much what I was doing during my engineering career, which I had up until maybe 2006 or so. I can't remember. Yeah, I don't know. It was rough, you know. I just remember doing like a show in Paris, and after the show, everyone goes out, and I'm wandering around doing a conference call in an empty club. You know, since the time difference, I could still do a conference call back in the States, and I'm like, man, what am I doing? You know. So I tried to, I tried to like get a plan together to diversify a bit. So started getting into recording and producing, and then having a studio I could rent out just to sort of make me feel a little bit better about quitting a day job.
Well, let's go back even further because on that tour I met your family, and I know that you're from New England. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Rhode Island. Yeah, Warwick.
And you used to have a pretty wicked Rhode Island accent, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. I was a wicked pissa for a while. Yeah, it was bad.
What kind of music was on in your house when you were growing up?
Let's see. I feel like my brother and my sister, older brother, older sister, pretty much dictated the music. It was just a lot of like classic rock radio, I would say. You know, just typical CCR, Led Zeppelin, The Who, you know, things like that. And so I felt like when I was around that age, I really wanted to play the drums. And so I found a pair of drumsticks somewhere, and I would sit on my couch, and I would have the headphones on and play along to the classic rock radio station for hours and hours. So much that my dad had to take up upholstering couches because I would like tear the arms and everything. So I'm very appreciative for him to do that and let me still drum on the couch. So,
did either of your parents play an instrument?
My mom was played the organ, so I dabbled a little bit with that. But I just felt like drums was my thing. I really liked it.
Do you remember what attracted you to drums to begin with?
Not really. I mean, I used to when you go to a restaurant, you see a show and you're a kid, you sort of gravitate towards something. And I remember gravitating always towards the drummer. I do remember I think I saw like Buddy Rich play at one point, on TV. And, I was like, wow, this guy's crazy. And, after that, I would always look to study the drummer, and I would be like, what makes that low sound? And then I would look and be like, okay, so there's a pedal there, so he's hitting his foot this, okay. So I would like look at a lot of that stuff, and sort of the MTV thing helped out a lot too. Yeah,
I remember early on when I was a little kid thinking that the bass drum was just there to say the band name, like as a direct decoration.
Yeah, totally. Right.
So when did you move from upholstery to an actual kit? Like when did you start?
Oh, wow. Yeah, so it was middle school, and it was one of my first days of middle school, and they had a band there. So I go in, and I'm like, I want to play the drums, and they're like, only 8th graders play the drums, so you have to wait a year. And I'm like, oh boy, okay. So I played the saxophone for a year. And then the first day of my next year, 8th grade, I walk in, I'm like, I want to play the drums. And my teacher's like, well, you're first chair saxophone and only idiots play the drums. So he wouldn't let me switch. He wouldn't let me play.
That's a quote from your teacher?
Yeah, only idiots play the drums.
Wow.
So now at least this idiot makes his living playing the drums, at least. Yeah. No, so I never.
Like an idiot?
No, not really. Not really. I mean, you know how it is. I just loved it, and I love it now. So, so I never played until my junior year of college. I was my roommate. His name was Adam DeBellis, and he was a guitar player, and I would always drum around on the dashboard and stuff. And he's like, "Hey, let's go into." I was working outside of DC because I was a co-op student, meaning I would work and go to school. But he was like, "Let's go to DC."
Did you go to UVA?
No, I went to NC State.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was working in Manassas, Virginia. He's like, "Let's drive to DC and get you a drum kit." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And so I bought a drum kit, and it was my junior year in college, and that's when I started. That's my first kit. So.
Can you remember what it felt like to sit down and play that kit for the first time?
Yeah, I can, totally. It was like the most amazing feeling, yeah. I remember getting it, going down into the basement of his house, and I was so excited I set it up right at the bottom of the stairs so no one could even come down, you know? Like I just set it up right there and started playing in the worst possible place to set up a drum set. Yeah, I think I played Sunday Bloody Sunday as my very first song.
Could you play it just from memory?
Yeah, yeah. Because it's the way he does it. He does it's really just at least the way I think he plays it is it's just single strokes right then left, and then he's just coming out into the snare for those beats. So so he's going under with his left hand on some of those accents. So yeah, I mean it probably wasn't very good, but you know.
But yeah, I mean I'm getting goosebumps thinking about that feeling. I feel so lucky to have even ever experienced that. You know.
Yep.
It's an indicator, and it if I think about my life, it's kind of like the main kind of compass that has led me to whatever life I've had.
Yeah. How old were you then when you were probably a lot younger than me then, right?
I was 11.
Okay.
When I first played drums, and I'd played other instruments before that, and
oh, you did?
Felt a shade of that feeling, but it was the most pure when I first played drums, and it didn't matter that I wasn't good.
Right,
because I wasn't aware that I wasn't good. It was just pure joy.
That's true. Yeah. No, that's good. I hadn't really thought about that feeling in a long time. So yeah, it's.
How often do you get that feeling when you're playing a show?
Let's see. I mean, I do get it every once in a while. You know, I do feel like there's a point where I feel like I could sort of do anything, you know, and. I mean, you know my style. I don't really stretch out at all, you know, so to speak. But I do feel like there are times when I feel like I'm in the pocket really well and I'm hitting with the band and I can maybe throw in a couple of things and I'm like, well, I never tried that before, but I was just feeling it. And, you know, you get a little look from the band and it's a really good feeling. So I would say, you know, once every 5 shows, I guess, something like that.
And so you're a junior in college. Were you studying electrical engineering or?
I was, yeah, at NC State. And that's evidently how I lost my accent too, was going to NC State.
Did you consciously get rid of your accent?
I was definitely ribbed a lot, you know. It was pretty rough.
Were you traumatized by the lack of Dunkin' Donuts down there?
It was a little heartbreaking, yeah. But the pork barbecue made up for it.
So did you join a band?
Yeah, I was playing in like sort of cover bands and stuff like that. But since it was my junior year in college, I was sort of focusing on getting out of there. And then my first job was in Houston and to work at Compact Computer. And I moved there and they had a big band.
Yes, you've told me about this.
Yeah, they had a big band.
So you joined a compact big band.
I did, yeah, because I don't know. I feel like my whole life I've always felt like I started things really late. You know, you started drumming at 11. I started at pretty much 20. You know, and so I always felt like
I'm putting out my first album at age 40. So,
well, I haven't done that yet. So, solo record. So, you know, but I feel like, I'm like, I took a few lessons, didn't take a lot of lessons. I'm not great with the rudiments. I feel like I'm a minimalist in how I play and everything. But the idea of playing jazz to me, I felt like it could accelerate my playing. I would learn how to play better with people. I felt like I could learn something. So I decided, I'm going to go and I'm going to like dive into jazz. So I pretty much played jazz 7 days a week in Houston when I was working there. They had Houston Community College had a jazz program, and I would do classes there, and then I took private lessons, and then I played in the compact big band, and there was a compact combo and stuff.
What was it like playing with the compact big band for the first time?
Well, it was interesting. I mean, there were two drummers and me, so those guys had been playing for years. And I showed up and I'm like, hey, I can't read music or anything. So, and they're like, oh, fine, you'll do fine. So first day, they played a bunch of songs and they're like, hey, Jim, do you know that song, Got to Get You Into My Life, And I'm like, yeah, I know that one. And I'm like, I can't read music, right? And they're like, yeah, no problem. So I'm like, okay, I can do this. So it's a shuffle. And it's a pretty great feeling to be playing with like 18 other people, and you're the drummer and you're sort of driving it and controlling things. It's pretty fun. And so I'm playing it, getting a little lost as far as like, just really enjoying myself. The song ends and I'm like, okay, cool. So I start packing up my sticks, and then all of a sudden I stand up and then the song starts again. And I'm like, wait, what's going on? So I grab my sticks and I start playing again. And then the song stopped again, and the other drummer tapped me on the shoulder. He's like, hey, Jim, you missed your drum solo. So there was a 16-bar drum solo that I just stood up and put my sticks in my bag like the most avant-garde drummer ever. And I remember everyone looking back at me, and I'm like, what? Well, I'm just, next song, right? So
it's interesting.
It's very traumatic.
Because, having played in some big bands myself, I feel like it's an experience that lots of musicians don't get to have these days unless they go to school for music.
Right.
And the fact that you worked at one of these great big American companies, big enough to have its own big band, is another sign of like, the era of computing that you worked in. I mean, these were the days where when I was getting into computers as a kid, not to give away too much of my nerdiness, but I would just call IBM and ask them questions about how the computers were made, and they would sit on the phone and talk to me for hours.
Oh, wow.
And so, for folks that don't know, Compaq was founded in the early 80s by a few guys in Texas, and then was later acquired by Hewlett-Packard. But I just feel like, would Facebook have a big band? I don't think so. Just like a different type of company that doesn't seem to exist as much anymore.
Right. They have like D&D groups now.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure they do.
Yeah. But I mean, like for me, that was a huge part of my style, I think. Big band, Joe, so like you could just read the lead trumpet part, and so you see a bunch of spaces, a bunch of rests, and you're just playing time, and then there's a big horn kick on the end of 4 and you set it up. That kind of stuff was like so fun. And like the idea that like once I played it for a couple years, I could play a song I had never heard before and sound like I actually, had played it. Then there's odd time signatures and things like that, dropping bars. I feel like all that helped with my rock playing quite a bit.
So at this time, did you have any ambitions to become a professional drummer?
Oh, no. No way. I mean, I didn't think it was possible, I started so late. I have an engineering career, and I'm just like, man, this is a great hobby, I'm doing this every day at 6:00, it's great.
And you didn't even kind of like secretly harbor a desire to play drums and give up your engineering career at that point?
No, I didn't think it would ever be possible. Never.
So when was this that you were working at Compaq?
I was like 90 to 92. I moved to Austin in 92.
And how did you meet Britt?
Well, I moved to Austin in 92 to start working at Motorola for the first, this is very nerdy, but the first PowerPC processors. So it was Motorola, IBM, and Apple all working together. And so I was on a microprocessor design team there. And then when I moved to Austin, I just started looking at the Chronicle, which is the weekly paper, and sort of answering ads and things like that. And I answered an ad to play a show with this guy, Brad Schenfeld, who is now our lawyer. And he had like a blues band, and I played a show with them. Then I got a call a little bit later, and there was a recording session. And what ended up happening was Britt was getting his degree from UT in radio, television, and film. And he had a recording session, and it was he, Brad, and then the drummer. They wanted to use a different drummer. So I went in and played about, I think, 7 songs in a day or something like that. And, you know, they would play the song for me. I would be making quick notes and charts and stuff. And then I would pretty much play the song from top to bottom on the first take or second take or whatever. So I don't think they were used to someone who could at least think that way.
And would you attribute that skill to playing in the big band for those years?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
When did it feel like Spoon was an actual band that you were a part of?
Well, the band, so then the 3 of us formed a band called the Alien Beats. And we played like country, rockabilly, or something like that around Austin for a while. And then that band broke up because Brad went to law school in California. And so Britt said he was writing songs and wanted to know if I wanted to come over and check him out. And I went over there, and he and I played about maybe 5 songs off of the first Spoon record. And I mean, it was pretty... I mean, the songs pretty much blew me away. They, because I was just used to Britt being a bass player in this country rockabilly band, and then him playing guitar and singing and having these songs that, you know, if you ever go back and listen to Telephono, it's like the chorus is, the verses are like in 6 and the choruses are in 4 or verses in 5. Then it goes to a 12/8 feel or something like that. But he didn't think that way. It was just how his melodies fit with his chord progressions. But so for me as a drummer, it was pretty awesome to play because my job is to make it not seem square and not seem like there are odd time signatures there are beats dropped in things. You know, it needed to feel good and flow, and I felt like we clicked, you know.
Right. You have an engineering mind, and then you also have this really groovy kind of minimalist drum style that perfectly complements that songwriting style.
Right, exactly, yeah. And, you know, you can do things like instead of hitting a big crash and a kick on every change of meter, you know, you just hit 2 kick drums or something like that, and it becomes so subtle that the song flows from one time signature to the other, you know, stuff like that, to try not to beat it into people.
When you are constructing beats or writing beats for songs, how much of it is based on conscious thought and how much of it is based on feel?
Let's see. I don't know. That's hard to say. I mean, I think I come up with the best parts when I get a demo with no drums, and this is Spoon or anyone I play with, a demo with no drums that I can just go in and play along with for, 30 minutes or so, because I tend to be able to pick off different little accents here and there throughout the demo to create something. I feel like sometimes if I get a demo with a beat on it, it just sort of pigeonholes me into that feel,
Yeah.
So is that subconscious or by feel? I'm not really sure, but that's sort of like how I like to work.
And how would you describe your role in the band beyond, just playing drums? Like, what's your creative role?
Let's see. I don't know. I feel like we're all pretty good in the studio, so I feel like I can help when it comes to sounds. If we're working with a producer, I can help with describing how I think a sound may fit us better, maybe. I feel like we're always anyone can throw out creative ideas at any time. So, I don't know, just as a support band member.
Well, let's talk about sound a little bit, because one of the first things that struck me when I heard Spoon 20 plus years ago for the first time is that the sound of the recordings was excellent, and especially the sound of the drums. And I wonder how you create that drum sound. Like, do you approach it like an engineering problem? And do you spend a lot of time perfecting it? Or is it just throw up some mics and that's naturally what comes out?
I think a lot of the drum sound has to do with the player, because I've recorded a lot of different drummers, and definitely how you hit the drums, the volume and things like that affects the sound. But I feel like we started coming into our drum sound for Spoon when we worked with Mike McCarthy, the producer, who engineered a lot of that stuff. And we would take a lot of time on drum sounds. We would basically sit and tweak and tune and everything. And I just feel like that had a lot to do with it. He's a great engineer. I learned so much from him. And I don't know. I feel like we tend to like dry drums, not a ton of room, and sort of bright and snappy. That's sort of how we tend to like it.
Yeah, and you say we, which would imply that the band makes decisions about the sonics collectively.
Oh, yeah, totally, yeah, 100%. Yeah, we all have to make sure that all these sounds fit together, But and also, if you get a really good drum sound, it's easier to put sounds on top of, because
right.
The drums are going to cut in the mix. You have the foundation set. But we also believe that every sound you record and commit to affects your next sound. So, we tend to not do a lot of 300 different instruments and then leave it for the mix. We tend to really try to make things stack up with each other. That's not to say if a song's not working, we may remove a part that we felt was holding everything together just to see if it would create something new. But, we tend to, work off of what we have previously recorded, as a building block.
To that end, do you feel like you're able to make decisions and commit to sounds more quickly now? Do you have a stronger instinct than when you were starting out?
Yeah, I think so. I think we have a good instinct now. I do think we had more limitations back when we were recording on tape. That is a definite. Now we can record a lot of tracks and try a lot of different things and leave up some room mics that we may bring in later, if we want the song to be a sound to be a little roomier or something. We did a lot of records on 16 track and also 24 tracks. So, those were fun days. You had to commit. Those discussions about how we're going to do that, and I'm throwing over old analog tapes into Pro Tools and to see how we punched in a vocal on a tambourine track, and there's 1 second after. I'm like, wow, that was pretty amazing. So stuff like that. We had to do things like that in order to get everything we wanted into the song.
You mentioned earlier that the band has been going pretty much nonstop since 1995. Was there a time when it felt like you were gaining momentum outside of just the band members and your circle of friends?
I feel like we started playing in, 95 or so, touring, and I don't really think many people came to our shows or bought our records for a good 6 years, until 2001 when we put out Girls Can Tell. And so it was hard for a while in the beginning, but then I remember in 2001 the record came out, and we pulled over to we heard there was going to be an interview on NPR about our record, so we pulled over and listened to it. And then after that, things just started getting, more people kept coming to our shows. I remember we're driving towards New York, going up through the Midwest and over to New York, and we would get ticket counts every day, and just the excitement when we finally sold out our first show at the Bowery Ballroom, and then wow, they're going to give us another night. That's amazing. And so we sold out 2 nights at the Bowery Ballroom, and I can feel like that energy has carried us since then. We had like sort of a downtime right after Transference came out. We took a break. I did a lot of producing. Britt put out a record with the Divine Fits. So that was our one break. But, we were still really busy in that time. So when I say we were going nonstop since 95, it's, I took a lot of producing gigs right around that time because I really wanted to produce more. So I was still very busy.
Did you get a sense of satisfaction from balancing this music career that was on the rise with engineering and having a family? Did you pride yourself in being able to balance all of those different tasks?
No, I was just hanging on by a thread, I just felt like I wasn't really great at anything. I was average at all that stuff,
You're still pretty self-deprecating when it comes to your drumming, Jim.
Oh, well, yeah. We could talk later, Joe.
Well, just for the record, I think you're a great drummer, and I've always said that too.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thanks. But it was hard. I look at it now and I don't know how I was able to do the day job and tour. So I probably wasn't doing either very well. I think I was touring okay, doing shows and doing good shows, but it's just hard to juggle all that stuff. I feel like it's hard now, even just juggling Spoon with family stuff. Back in 1995, we were getting offers from labels and stuff, and I'm like, man, should I just quit my day job? And our producer at the time, John Crosland, he said, when you quit your day job, it's going to be black and white that it's time to quit your day job. So I always just was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let me just see, as long as my company is working with me and as long as they're going to give me, 3 months off or work remotely for 3 months, to 6 months a year, then I should still do it. That's how I felt. And then, my company I was working at the time, it was a little startup company in Austin, and it went out of business, and it was probably 2 weeks before we were going to start recording Ga 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 Ga, and I had just finished my studio, and I'm like, okay, that's pretty black and white right there, I'm not going to interview for another job. I'm just going to dive into this music thing full time.
When did you start producing?
I started buying recording gear around probably 98 or so, or 99. That was we put out Series of Sneaks in 98, and so we got dropped 3 months after that. And I felt like it would be good if we were more self-sufficient, that we could work and not pay a studio. And also I really liked the idea of engineering. I thought I would really enjoy it. So I started buying things around that time. So I would say I started producing things around 2000 or so.
What is your goal when you're working with an artist as a producer?
I don't know. I always look at myself as like the one additional band member. You know, when you're in a band, you know there are people that hold parts like dear and hold on to them, you know, because they're invested in those parts and stuff. So for me, I can look at any part or feel or structure of the song, and I can be like, look, from an outsider, this is how I feel about this. You know, I feel like this is the hooky part, or I feel like, you know, you should do a double chorus or whatever. That's just how I feel. But, you know, at the end of the day, it is the band's record. You know, we've worked with a lot of producers that we're sitting in the back of the control room and we're like, is this our record or is this their record? You know? And so I've been able to pick and choose things that I've seen other producers do and try to only do the good things and, you know, definitely shy away from the bad things that I've seen.
How hard are you on yourself when you're recording drums?
Very hard.
Very hard?
Yes, very hard on myself.
So what is your internal monologue like when you're doing it?
Well, sometimes I feel like I come into the control room and I feel like it sounds good. But it's one thing about me playing drums. I tend to lose a lot of perspective, especially when it comes to like takes and things like that. You know, like if I'm producing and there's another drummer, I like know instantly. I can put a take together and comp really easily. I can listen to a vocal and stuff and all that. But when I am doing it, it's like really, really difficult for me to step away. So, I guess I hear, you know, not tight with the click, you know, standard stuff, you know, I should have done this. Let me go do another take. Let me do this, you know. So I tend to love a lot of positive direction when I track drums because it keeps my, I think optimism shows in my playing when I am in that kind of frame of mind. So, you know, it's difficult to you know, have this creative switch, you know. If you're songwriting or doing something alone, you have to get in the right state of mind to be creative and to feel like you're creating something good. If your brain is in a different state or your mind's on something else, it's just not going to work. But when you're in the studio, it doesn't really matter where your head is at. You got to get in there and play, you know. That's why... Go ahead, Joe.
It's almost like a matter of shutting off that critical mind to a certain extent.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, but I also have an opinion because I know there's certain fills that I'm like, oh no, we definitely need to use this one. And like, so I can sort of tell, but it ends up being the other part of my brain. And it's like, you know, I don't know. It's just really, really hard to describe. That's why personally, I don't think I could ever be a studio drummer. Because I don't have that, you know, I can't turn that off and be like, you know, I don't know. Yeah, it's very strange.
Well, it's interesting because I just posted a conversation with another Jim Keltner. That episode went up today. And, you know, his whole thing for a long time was like, I don't want to have an individual voice. I'm just going to do whatever I need to do to fit into somebody else's song. And he had this, like, crazy kind of egoless approach. And is also a genius, but
Yeah, totally.
But I wonder if that kind of helped him kind of divorce himself from his natural ego and kind of get away from that perfectionist tendency that you can't have if you're doing, multiple albums in a day, as he was in his heyday.
Yeah, totally. But like for me, if there is a song and like everyone's like singing a fill for me to play, and I'll play them and we'll track them all or something, like I'm like that, doesn't sound like me. It just doesn't sound like something I would play. So me as an individual, I feel like it still has to sound like it's coming from me. So I have to take what people are sort of throwing at me and make it my own.
Right.
And I feel like that's where I have a little bit of a style. I have, my two fills I always do, and, some variations off of those. Just kidding, Joe.
There's your self-deprecation again.
Right, yeah.
Well, let's get into that. Are you measuring your drumming ability against people like Steve Gadd, who are incredibly versatile and incredibly technically adept? Do you see people like that as the gold standard to which every drummer should aspire?
Well, I don't think that's what a drummer should be. I wish I could pull off more stuff than, I can. And I feel like that has a lot to do with me not, playing drum set and rudiments, early on, and then when I started playing drums, a lot of it is band, and it's like so much going on. I can't woodshed, I can't do this. I'm just sort of flying by the seat of my pants, But there's a certain amount of like, when I record a drummer and like the execution is good, but then also there's a flair that you can say, tone it up or tone it down. Those are the guys I like working with, And for me, I tend to always tone it down, you know what I mean? I tend to like, just sort of, okay, well, it's definitely going to be better, simpler, So,
which is usually true.
It is usually, yes.
I mean, do you like listening to complex drummers?
Let's see. I mean, I do love Steve Gadd, let's see. What's an example? I mean, I love The Who. Like, you give me some examples, Joe.
Like Mahavishnu Orchestra, Billy Cobham or something.
I mean, I can appreciate it, but I wouldn't usually put it on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Williams.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so it just kind of seems like your style is a reflection of your own personal taste and the music that resonates with you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Are you easier on yourself if you're tracking on somebody else's record? Like, do you feel like you can step outside of yourself a little bit more?
I think so, but a lot of the stuff that I'm playing drums on outside of Spoon, I'm also producing.
Right. So are you able to engage your producer mind on that rather than your drummer mind?
Yeah, I definitely do things a lot faster, I think, that way. Because, I'm really just getting something down that works, you know?
Right.
I don't know. One of the things I feel like as Spoon that we're good at is we really try hard not to repeat ourselves, sonically and things like that. And I feel like I try to do that in my playing too, So I try to evolve as a drummer and try different things on Brit's songs that I, not like this is the same thing that I always do. So, I feel like it's more interesting that way. As a new record comes out, then it sort of gets people excited.
So what are you most excited about right now, artistically?
Right now, I am most excited about this Spoon record that we're doing. It's, we're about, let's see, where are we now? I think we have about maybe 6 to 8 songs very close to being done. And during this quarantine period, Brit has written like another 6 or so, which is pretty amazing because usually we are we just complete the number of songs that are on the record. So, this will allow us to pick and choose between sort of a bigger batch, hopefully.
Oh, so that's interesting. So you don't tend to demo out dozens of songs and then cherry pick them for the records you make?
No, he does. He demos out a ton of songs and then brings the ones to the band, but then also we pare it down from there, usually, just what's working and what's not. So...
do you try playing them as a band in rehearsal first or dive into recording?
We'll usually do some sort of rehearsals together, and sometimes I won't even know what's going on. I'll be like, hey, I have this riff, let's sort of try it out. And I've never heard the recorded version, things like that. Other times, there may be a demo and I'll hear it and we'll talk and they'll be like, this doesn't even need any drums. What you have programmed is great. And I'm fine with that because I feel like that makes a record more interesting and more varied. You don't need drum set on every tune. So it goes a lot of different ways.
And do you have producing projects lined up?
Yeah. A few. Everything sort of is a little bit weird because we were supposed to be finishing up the record right about now. We should have been mixing maybe this month or next month, but, we just sort of had to hit the pause button.
What have your days been like since you hit the pause button?
I haven't been able to spend this much time and get in like a routine like this before. So it's been pretty great, like doing mornings with my son and then, getting a few hours in the studio and then dinner and hang out with my wife after that. It's been great. So I tend to work, during the day here in the studio, either mixing projects, working on pre-production, listening to Spoon stuff. I'm also I'm sort of been diving into a lot of weirder type music. Have you ever heard of Alva Noto? Joe?
No.
It's sort of like you take Aphex Twin and you take sort of the melodies out of it, and he's sort of like a granular synthesis. I'm probably butchering this, but granular synthesis kind of programmer where he'll use noise and sounds to create things like drum sounds and bass sounds and things like that. And it's pretty amazing. So I've been, playing around with noise composition. I've also been playing around with a DAW called a tracker. Have you ever heard of a tracker?
No, what's that?
It's like an early sequencer program, early DAW, basically, workstation kind of thing. It runs
like
on
a
your
Sound Designer Contemporary or something?
No, it's like more like Ableton, that kind of thing. It's like a piano roll. It looks like that when it runs, and it's like a lot of the early glitchy type producers used it. Like I'm pretty sure Aphex Twin did a lot of his early stuff on trackers, and there's like hex codes in there that you can make sounds go backwards and repeat, and it's very, very detailed. And I sort of got into that after listening to a lot of Aphex Twin, where it seems like he's tweaking every single sound and doing something with it, So I've been getting into that a little bit. So it's been fun. I've been exploring new things. So
right. So maybe that'll be your solo record, granular synth masterpiece.
Yeah, exactly.
70 or something.
Yeah. Right. Working on it.
Wasn't everyone, and if you listen up just once, if you want, you can never leave it. If you want, you can let it go. I had a feeling from the start
we're reissuing the entire catalog on Matador. And
you were on Matador for a minute back in the early days in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then you
exactly.
moved
Our first
over to
record
a number
was
of labels.
correct, yeah, and then merged for quite a while, yeah. But yeah, so the records are all being re-released. All the vinyl has been recut. Like the EP Soft Effects, that's going to actually be released on vinyl for the first time since its release in the mid-90s. And that's a great EP. It's pretty exciting. So that's going to be a standalone vinyl. Previously, we had lumped that in with Telephono, the first record, but now we're offering that as a standalone vinyl. Let's see, July 24th is when Telephono and Soft Effects come out. And yeah, so it's pretty exciting. Going to be able to do that. I think a friend of ours, Peter Simonite, who used to do a bunch of videos with us, he I guess, reimagined the Small Stakes video. He tweaked it and did a bunch of things to it to make it look a lot better. You know, sort of like you think about it like a video remastering, I guess. So he details all the gory specifics in an Instagram post. But yeah, so that's been re-released. And so, yeah, we're pushing that campaign. And, you know, I think it's going to be good to get those records like in all the territories. Some of these records have never even come out in other territories.
Yeah, how do you feel when you look back on this 25-year body of work? I mean, like, for example, when you listen to the early records, are you still hard on yourself? Or with the distance of time, can you appreciate it like a listener rather than a band member?
Yeah, I'm definitely a listener when I listen back. So one of the things I've been doing is approving all the test pressings. So I've listened to all these records lots of times over the past few months because they'll be like, hey, Soft Effects, here's the test pressing coming at you, you know, and I have to listen and basically approve it. It's been pretty amazing to go back and listen to the whole catalog. And I mean, it's really strong. And I feel like, you know, the reason why it's strong is, you know, Britt is an amazing songwriter and those songs, they hold up. They're great.
Does it bring back, you know, memories of what you were doing in your life when you were recording it?
I think it brings back more like recording things, you know, like I'll be like, hey, Britt, you know, I'll be like listening to a test pressing and I'll text Britt about something like, do you remember this? You know, that was cool, you know, so.
Well, yeah, it's weird to think that we met so long ago, Jim, because it doesn't feel like 16 years ago. But
I know.
But
who's counting, Joe?
It was really fun being on that tour with you guys, and it was kind of the first rock tour I had done in years. I mean, I was still relatively young, but I had been focused on playing with other styles of music and composing a little bit, and it kind of got me playing with Mary and, you know, watching you guys kind of helped get me back into wanting to play in rock bands again.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
that was a great tour. That was so fun, yeah.
Yeah, and I just think about all the great people that I've met on that tour in specific. I mean, Jeff Bird.
Did you meet Bird?
Doing sound
you met
for
Bird
us.
back.
Yeah, and he did sound for my band, and he's just a great guy, and it's you know, one of the best things about playing music is all the people you meet along the way, and I'm really glad that we met, and it's been great to kind of keep in touch with you over the years, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Joe. It's good to chat with you again.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.